Today we're going to learn how to wash a raw fleece. This is the step that follows skirting a fleece. The purpose of washing a fleece is to remove the manure, dirt, urine, and some of the lanolin. The key word is some. I don't like to remove all of the lanolin or it's too dry and straw-like. I've sent my wool to a woolen mill before to have it washed, and I thought that it came back very dry and straw-like and I didn't care for it. So I do prefer to do it my own way here at home. This is probably my second favorite part of wool processing. My favorite is carding, and this washing is my second favorite. It is very satisfying. So the materials you're going to need for washing wool, you're going to need 2 wash basins, a pair of gloves, and some Dawn dish soap. I like the blue original Dawn dish soap. There are other detergents that are specifically marketed for washing wool, so you can choose from those products as well. I personally do like the Dawn, and I prefer to do more natural and less harsh chemicals. And then of course you're going to need the fleece itself that has been skirted. Also, I like to use a laundry alternative spin dryer for drying the fleece. It does save a lot of time, but you could also do it manually as well, and I will show you both methods. I'm also going to give you some tips for how to avoid felting the wool. And felting wool means that basically the fibers get all matted up and entangled, and it forms a very dense sheet of material, and it's basically ruined at that point because you can no longer card it or spin it into wool. Now there is a whole skill of just felting wool where you intentionally felt the wool, but in this case I want to spin my wool and card it for quilts and spinning, and so we want to avoid felting. So let's get started with the washing. We're going to start with the big container, and the order that we do this is very important. We're going to first fill this container with hot water, and we want to do 130 degrees Fahrenheit. So this should be hot enough where I can put my hands in the water but not burn myself. Now, I do believe you can go up to 160 degrees, although I have not done that. I just stick to the 130 degrees Fahrenheit, and it has worked fine for me over many times. So let's go ahead and fill that basin. Now, I really recommend doing your wool washing outdoors because the lanolin or the grease from the fleece, I don't want that getting into my drains and ruining my plumbing in my house. So I prefer to just do all of this outdoors. So I'm going to be filling, and I'm fortunate enough that I did hook up a hot water spigot on the outside of my house so I can access hot water outdoors. So I'm going to go ahead and fill up the basin with hot water. So when I'm estimated that I'm close to the amount of water that I want in here, the second step is to add the soap or the detergent you're using. I don't measure it, but I'm assuming it's about a tablespoon or so. I just kind of eyeball it. I'd rather use too much than too little, honestly. So I'm going to add the soap second, a little bit more water. And now the third step is that we're going to lower the fleece into the water. So go ahead and put your gloves on. One of the ways that you can felt the fleece is by agitation. So we don't want to agitate the fleece, which is why we're going to lower it gently into the water. You would never do this in a washing machine that has an agitator. So this fleece that I have here is a Shetland fleece. And this is from an ewe named Curiosity. She's got a really nice quality fleece with a long staple length and a lot of it. So this is a pretty large fleece. Now I'm going to lower the fleece gently into the water. And I'm being careful. I'm not going to agitate or go left to right in any way. I'm only going up and down. So I'm pushing down gently. And you can see how dirty the water is. It's always amazing when you're doing the very first washing, just how dark brown that water gets. It's very, very dirty. So I recommend doing 3 washes and 2 rinses. That's typically what I will do. My cat is very interested in what we're doing today. So that's on average what I will do. Now this can vary with the fleece. You may want to do 4 washes and 2 rinses. It's up to you. You will use more hot water the more cycles you choose to do. So now that we have this first washing sitting in here, we're going to leave this sit for at least 10 minutes or more. The reason is we want these fibers to sit and open up right now so they can start to, remove the materials that we don't want, the dirt, the lanolin, etc. Another issue is we don't want to wait too long where the water would have a chance to cool down. So you need to come back here and check the water temperature after 10 minutes or so and make sure that the water isn't rapidly cooling off. You don't want to wait too long and have it soak too long. The reason is, another thing that can make your fiber felt is temperature changes. So we need to make sure that we are washing and rinsing at 130 degrees Fahrenheit and being consistent with each cycle. So if I came back here 30 minutes from now, this would have cooled down too much, and then I wouldn't want to wash it at 130 degrees again and have any temperature changes and risk felting the fiber. So we're going to let this soak for about 10 minutes or so and come back and check. Okay, so it's been 10 minutes and we're now going to check our first washing here. It's still warm, so it hasn't cooled down too much, but it's definitely time. So what I like to do is I like to just tip this bucket over and just strain out some of the water. Just so the bucket isn't so heavy for me when I lift it. So we're just going to drain some of that out. That's good enough. Tip that back up. And now I'm going to carry this bucket over to my spin dryer. Okay. So one alternative is you can manually squeegee and dry your fleece, and I will show some footage of how I do it that way. But I really like this spin dryer. It makes my life so much easier. I don't have to bend over as much, so I really feel like my knees and my lower back are getting spared a lot of agony that's unnecessary. So we're going to show how to use this. So first you're going to open the lid. Now this is not going to agitate the fiber because it's spinning in one motion. So it is safe to do this. You do want to make sure that when you are skirting your fleeces, the fibers were teased open adequately prior to the washing. Now, because this is a large fleece, I'm probably going to break this up into thirds and put a third of the fleece in at a time. A smaller, like when I did a lamb's fleece earlier this week, I did it in halves. So I broke it into 1/2 and 1/2. So you just don't want to overfill your spin dryer. So let's do about thirds for this one. So I'm literally going to pick up the fleece and dump it in. And yes, I am going to get dirty water on here, but we'll be cleaning this up at the end. So don't worry about that right now. So one of the tips I've learned with this is you want to put it in sopping wet. Don't bother squeegeeing it out. And I would rather not anyways, because it's, like I said, it saves my back and my knees from having to bend over so much. So go ahead and put it in sopping wet. And we're going to close the lid. And the reason I like to put it in sopping wet is because I find that it balances better. Now we are outside, so this isn't on a level surface. We're out on gravel and grass right now. So putting it in sopping wet makes it balance better. This is just a trick that I've learned. So we're going to turn the lever all the way to the right, and it's going to start to spin. And it is going to wobble around a little bit, but you can see that didn't wobble very much. It actually leveled out really quickly. If it does wobble around too much, you can always take your hand and hold the top of it down, but I didn't need to do that. So this spout here is where all of the water is draining out of. And you can see how dirty brown that is. So this is spinning at a very fast speed, like a centrifuge, extracting kind of like a salad spinner, where it's the centrifuge and it's extracting all of the liquid out of there. So if you were going to do this in your house for like actual laundry, you would have to put some kind of a container under here or put it in your bathtub. But since we're outside, I can just let it go all over the place. You don't want to run this thing for too long. I think it was around 4 to 5 minutes per time that you can run it per the manufacturer's instructions. And so I'm actually going to shut it off already. So you just turn it to the left to get it to stop spinning, and when it stops spinning you can turn it all the way to the left and then the lid will pop up. So I'm going to grab my second basin. I've got a smaller one here that I'll put on the right hand side. And now I can take this out of the spin dryer and into this container. And this is really, really amazingly dry. It truly extracts all of the liquid out of here. I mean, it's phenomenal to me, because when I do it by hand, I can't get it this dry. So I do feel like I actually am getting it cleaner by doing it this way too, because it's extracting more of the liquid out. So that looks really good. So now we're going to grab another 1/3 of the fleece and repeat this process. I got another one of my cats over here who's interested in this procedure today. It's going to be wetter as I get closer to the bottom of the basin here. Like I said, don't worry that you're getting dirty water all over this. We're going to clean it up at the end. I will rinse this out though when I'm getting close to my final rinse cycle, so that I don't have the dirt on that. Okay, so that's about another 1/3 there. Go ahead and close your lid. And we're going to turn this on. So just watch the bottom to see when the water starts to decrease, and then you can turn it off. So now we're down to the final 1/3, and this is where there's the most liquid in it, because I'm at the bottom of the container. Okay, so that's pretty wet there. I'm going to go ahead and turn that on again. So that is enough of the spinning there. Go ahead and turn that off and remove. You can see how nice that is already, and that is literally just the first wash cycle. I'm going to be doing 5 cycles in total, 3 washes and 2 rinses, and it already is looking, pretty darn good. So now we're going to head back to the larger wash basin again, and we're going to do the second wash cycle. I like to give my bucket a little rinse. So again, we're going to be filling this up. Water first, soap second, and third, lower the fleece in. You never want to spray the water directly on top of the fleece. So we're going to go ahead and repeat those steps. Okay, and now we're going to be lowering the fleece in. I was pretty generous with the detergent this time around here, so you can see it's rather soapy. So I'm just lowering down, I'm not agitating left to right. So you can notice the color of the water that yes, it is still pretty brown, but it's going to be a lighter brown than that first one, which was very dark brown. So with each successive cycle, we're going to see the water getting lighter and lighter as it gets cleaner. So again, let these fibers open up by sitting in this heat. And we're going to come back in another 10 minutes or so and repeat for a third washing. So wash number 3 is ready to be spun out. So again, we're going to take this water and just tip some of it out again. Okay. Again, I'm going to bring this over to my spin dryer. And again, we're going to be placing a third of it into the machine. Okay, turn that on. This is starting to look pretty nice. Okay, so now we're ready to move on to the rinse cycles. Typically I'll do 2 rinse cycles, so this will be rinse number 1 that we're going to go do right now. Okay, so this time we're going to skip the soap, we're done with the washing, and we're going to just do plain water. Again, we want to keep it at 130 degrees, we want to have consistent temperature again. So go ahead and fill your bucket and we're going to lower that into the rinse water. I typically use less water for the rinsing than the washing. So you can already note the color difference here, that this time the water is getting lighter and lighter. So we're going to let this soak again, just as we did the previous cycles. We will come back and spin this dry, and then we will rinse a second time, at which point I expect it will be suitable and ready to dry. So when I've completed the 3 wash cycles, what I like to do is come over here and just do a light cleaning of the spin dryer to kind of remove some of that lanolin and dirt that's in there before I start spinning out the rinse cycles. So I'm literally going to spray the hot water into this stainless steel barrel and spin it out just to kind of give it a rinse. You can take your hands in there and kind of swish it around a little bit. Okay, and I'm going to close this and spin it out with nothing in it but the water. And that's adequate for now. It was just to give it a quick little rinse so that it was clean for the rinse cycles. At the end of the day, when I'm done doing all the fleeces that I want to do, I will thoroughly clean this with soap and water in the interior and exterior, and then I'll be bringing it back in my house for storage. We're going to go ahead and strain out and dry the first rinse cycle. I used less water for the rinse, so there's less to strain out. Again, we're going to take it to the spin dryer. It's always windy out here. Fiber wants to blow away. Okay, so here's how the fiber is looking. It's looking really good. We're going to do one more rinse cycle, just for good measure, but this is looking really phenomenal. So repeat as we did before with the rinse cycle. This will be our second and final. So again, note the color of this is very light at this point. So if this fiber gets spun into yarn, part of the yarn making process is setting the twist, in which this will be soaked in hot water again. So additional cleaning can happen at that stage as well. At this point, I don't really feel that it needs to sit in here for a full 10 minutes. You can go a little less than that if you'd like. And then we're going to do the final spin. And we'll run it a little bit longer in the spin dryer, since this is the final spin, and we're going to be placing it on my drying rack. Last cycle, and we're ready to spin this dry really well. The water's looking pretty clear there. I'm satisfied with the results. So this time, I'm more willing to run it a little bit longer in the spin dryer. Because this is the final one. Again, I'm going to do a third of the fleece at a time. And if you look in the bottom of my container, that water is not so brown anymore. An alternative method for washing a fleece is to not use a spin dryer, but rather to do it all manually. This means you'll need to do all of it by hand and squeegee out the water from top to bottom in small sections. It's pretty difficult to get a lot of water out doing it this way. The spin dryer is more effective. And this can be tiring on your hands if you have a lot of fleeces to do. In my opinion, it is worth getting the spin dryer. I'll have a link in the description if you would like to purchase one. If you choose to do this method, continue on one small section at a time, squeegeeing down from top to bottom, getting as much liquid out as you can. I'll have a separate video showing this method in a time-lapse format. So we're going to take this over to my drying rack for drying. So this is my drying rack that we constructed ourselves. I can do a video on how to construct one like this if you'd like. But you want to make sure that you're placing your fleeces from the top and work your way down. I intend to wash another fleece today, so right now I'm going to put Curiosity's fleece on this level. And then later on today I'll put the next one down here, so the water is always dripping down and not getting wet the one below it. So all you need to do is place it on your screen here and spread it out evenly. Now, it never looks very pretty when you're putting it all wet on the rack like this. It always looks better as the transformation progresses. So the ideal day to do this is sunny and windy. Either or. Today's even perfect because we have both sunshine and wind today. So it really is the perfect day for drying. And this is summertime, July right now in Minnesota. So we actually have enough warmth to do this. I have tried doing fleeces in November, and obviously it's very cold here in Minnesota in November. So then I'm stuck having to dry them in the house. But right now this is wonderful. So sun and wind are your friend. And you just want to make sure that you spread this out evenly. And you can come along here and stir it throughout the day if you want. Typically, I would come back in 24 hours and tease these open and then allow it to dry more. However, I've noticed that when I use this electric spin dryer, I can actually start teasing the fibers open within a few hours because it gets it so dry. So it does speed up the drying process for me. So I'll be sure to check back on the progress of this when we start teasing it open. Let's look at a couple more examples of wet fleeces. It is important to resist the temptation to start teasing the fibers open while they're wet. You do need to wait until it's dry, typically 24 hours. If you don't have a drying rack, you can use an old window screen, or you could buy a hanging herb drying rack. You can get creative with that. Next, we're going to take a close-up look of teasing the fibers open after the 24 hours have passed. So when you finish washing your fleece, you're going to need to place it on a drying rack. So this is Calvin's fleece, and this has been a little over 24 hours. So I washed it yesterday and it's the next day now. So you can see it's dried quite a bit. Now this section here, I've teased the fibers open, versus this section here, this is what it looked like when it was wet and I placed it on the rack. So this is untouched on this side. So look at the difference between the untouched versus the section where I've been teasing the fibers open. So that's the next step, is about 24 hours later when it's starting to dry, you need to go in there with your hands and tease open the fibers so they can dry 100%. You wouldn't want to bring damp wool into your house. When it's dry, it's a lot easier to pick out the vegetable matter. When you're carding in the house later, you can continue to pick out the vegetable matter. It's a lot easier when you're not battling the elements and the bugs. You'll notice there's a lot of nice crimp in this fleece, which comes from my sire. And he's really passed that along to his offspring, which is a lot of fun. The crimp really adds a lot of character to the yarn, versus commercial yarn is pretty boring. And hence the whole point of doing your own yarn. Next, let's look at some finished fleeces that are ready to be bagged up and put into the house to be carded during the winter months. We're here at my drying rack, and this is Solo's fleece. She's one of my favorite fleeces. She's a Shetland ewe. And I want to show you how beautiful the fleece can be after washing and how cool the transformation is. This has been washed, put on the drying rack, and teased open and allowed to dry further. This is ready to be bagged up and brought in the house for carding, which is the next step. I'm out here with my drying rack, and I have two fleeces that are 100% dry at this point. This was Calvin's fleece, a Shetland wether, and Harmony, a Shetland ewe. You can see that once they are fully dry, the volume increases tremendously, at least 50%, if not more, I would say. So here it is, and it is absolutely stunning. This is one of my favorite parts. The next stage will be carding this, and I absolutely love that part. So this is ready to store in my house at this point. So I'll be placing this into bags, and I'm going to place a piece of cedar into the bag to help repel moths. So first I'm going to be grabbing the bag, and I label them with the sheep's name and the year, just to keep things organized for me. So we'll start with Harmony's on the bottom here. I'm going to go ahead and place it in the bag. Since the volume increases so much, the bag is going to be pretty overfull. My cat thinks it's fun to play in there. They do the same thing when I'm skirting the fleece. They like to get up in there and play in it. So we'll be carding this fleece in the winter months. And I have a video showing that process, where we're taking each fiber and making the alignment parallel, which enables us to spin it into yarn or place it into a quilt. Harmony is one of those ewes where she has so much fleece on such a little body. It's just amazing how much wool can come off of her. All right, kitty, you might have to move a little bit. Okay, I need to go to the other side here so I can reach. I really like the smell of the wool after it's dry. Okay, so there's one nice, rather large bag of a Shetland fleece here ready to go in the house for the next stage. And next I'll be bagging up Calvin's fleece on the upper shelf. And there are my 2 Shetland fleeces ready to go into the house, and in the winter I'm going to really enjoy getting these carded up.